Hello and welcome to this second video of the Diaphanie overview series. My name is Paul Morin, I'm a cinematographer, one of the creators behind Diaphanie that is distributed by HAL Picture. And today we're going to look at the Spatial Equalizer module. The Spatial Equalizer is designed to shape the texture of the image by giving more or less weight to different zones of the image, defined by the level of details that they encompass. Thanks to a spatial frequency analysis, the Spatial Equalizer divides the image in 6 zones. The first zone includes the finest, most precise details of the image. The second zone selects the edges of the shapes and volumes in the image, and so on, till the 6th zone that handles the broad forms, shapes, and general volumes of the image, with little to no detail. You can actually visualize these 6 zones. So I'm going to open the Spatial Equalizer module, and I'm going to click on the Show Frequency in Zone checkbox. And this displays the zone number 1 as indicated by this slider. So in zone number 1, as you can see, we get all the fine details of the tree here, of the plant, of the lights. It's very, very fine details and specular lights as well, shiny objects, shiny reflections. In zone number 2, we get the edges of the main volumes. The volumes here being the 3 characters, all the patches, all the edges of the patches here, the plant as well. And as we go more broad and more broad, we get to the 6th zone that is really like general outlay of the image, the broad forms, the broad shapes. You can see that it's mainly the color patches here that are really flat surfaces and the faces of the persons as well. So from zone 1 to zone 6, we go from very high contrast fine details up to ample quasi-uniform shapes. And of course, when you composite the 6 zones, you get the full original image. The concept of a spatial frequency analysis to shape the texture of the image was first introduced by Baselight with their texture equalizer tool. You can find a similar approach with the Texture Pop plugin in Resolve. It's a different approach, but it works as well. And we designed our own math for that spatial equalizer, which we're very fond of. And I think the approach, which is a bit different, gives very satisfying results, as we're going to see. If you want to have an idea of the kind of look you can get with that tool, one example that comes to mind is the Inside Llewyn Davis. In this film, the texture relies heavily on Baselight's texture equalizer to give this hazy look and feel that is very specific to the look and has a significant impact on the mood of the film. So now that we've understood how the image is going to be split, how do we use that to our advantage? Well, for each of these zones, you get access to a gain slider, as you can see. And when you're going to increase or decrease the gain of a specific zone, you're going to increase or decrease its weight into the final image. But how does it translate visually? The first zone is going to contribute to the feeling of sharpness of the image, since they encompass all the finest details. So if you increase the weight of the first zone, you'll get the feeling that the image is getting sharper. See how the eyes pop out because there's this reflection in the eyes that gives this sharpness feeling. Of course, if I decrease the gain, if I go on the negative gain, then you get a blurrier feeling, almost like it's out of focus. In zones 2 to 3 or 2 to 4, depending on your image, you can get close to the behavior of the midtone detail operator. But the Spatial Equalizer is more customizable and less limited. So you can play like that, or on the opposite direction, and you can see how it pops out and it gives a bit of volume in the image because I amplified the gain on zone 2 to 4. Finally, in the coarser zones, increasing the gain will augment the impression of volume, while decreasing it will flatten the texture of the image and almost can give you a sort of a hazy look and feel, hazy, almost foggy look and feel. The zones are dependent on each other, and their default calibration should cover most use cases. But you can fine-tune the definition of the zones by changing the frequency threshold. By doing that, you will offset the frequency coverage of the first zone. And as you can see, if I go up if I increase the frequency threshold, I cover more details in the first zone. And that will have an impact on the other zones because they are all interrelated. And you can, on the contrary, you can go on with a lower frequency threshold and you will start by excluding more and more details in the coverage of the first zone. So this gives you a bit more control over which areas are selected by each zone. So that's a global look on the settings that we get. Let's now try and use it on an image. A common pattern when using Spatial Equalizer is to try and have a modern film emulation pattern. To get some kind of a filmic texture, you first want to reduce the feeling of sharpness, because it's in a film, even in a modern film environment, the feeling of sharpness is usually lower than in a digital environment. So that means reducing a bit the zone number 1. Then you're gonna want to try and reproduce the acutance increase that happens in film. It's a phenomenon that increases the contrast around the edges of the shapes of the image. And that usually is well emulated by increasing zone 2, zone 3, and a bit zone 4. So when I'm doing that, you can see how the shape of the image is starting to be affected by the settings. So you can see here with the 4 first zones, I managed to create this texture that we could really associate with a modern filmic look. You can also see that I didn't set up properly my region of interest, because I have blanking here, and the Spatial Equalizer is interacting with my blanking. So I just need to add the region of interest and to set it up in 240 for this shot. And it's even a bit more, so I'm going to go in the custom output ratio, and if I just get on the blanking, then there's no effect of the Spatial Equalizer on the blanking anymore. So that illustrates the importance of the region of interest and its usefulness. So as you can see, we've done that first attempt at emulating this filmic texture, and you can notice that I'm setting up the sliders here in kind of in a wave-like fashion. I don't create very huge discrepancies between the sliders, and that's helpful usually to create convincing and glitch-free textures, because since the zones are interconnected, if you go too far in two opposite directions from one zone to the next one, you might have an uncanny feeling, an uncanny look happening. It can look very not natural. So it's easier to try and keep this wave-like consistency, kind of like you're smoothing over the transformations between the zones. It's not mandatory, like especially with the zone 1, since the zone 1 covers very small details. You have more leeway, and you can really do some very important moves that are contradictory with the zone 2 and 3, and get away with it. But it's a good rule of thumb for zone 2 to 5 to try and be as smooth as possible. If we look at the presets, for instance, we have 3 film emulation presets that are built in with Diaphanie. We have one 35mm, which is a modern 35mm emulation, and we have two 16mm A and B. B being more intense and more destructive in a way than A. But you can see that the 3 presets actually have this smooth wave-like setting from zone 2 to 4 or 5. And you can also see that zone 6 is not used a lot. It's very rarely used because it has a lot of effects. And since it covers vast flat surfaces of the image, it also has an impact on the brightness. So you have to tread with care when you work on zone 6. Obviously, you're not doing this texture shaping out of the blue. You're working with data that has been acquired through lenses and a camera. So depending on the choice and the combination of lens and camera that you've used, the settings might have a different rendering, because, of course, your raw data might differ in terms of texture and sharpness. So you have to account for that when you're shaping your texture. But the presets are still a good working basis, and then you can adapt them given the nature of the footage you're looking at. You're obviously not limited to film emulation behaviors. Another common pattern that is often more associated with digital images than any film reference is to maintain the sharpness of the image. So don't touch the zone 1, or maybe amplify the zone 1, and then reduce the weight of the following zones to create some kind of a diffuse, hazy look and feel. Let's try it out. So sharper, and then a bit less volume, a bit more flat in a way. one of the characteristics of achieving such a hazy look through Spatial Equalizer is that you get complete control of the amount of blurriness that this hazy look and feel will integrate. It would not necessarily be the case with an optical filter to achieve the same look. So that's something to consider when shaping the texture with this module. Another perk of this fully parametric tool is that you can fine-tune the texture up to the final grade. It's not uncommon to have a basic setting that works very well on most shots, but you will encounter some shots that need a variation around your basis. For instance, if you have a silhouette, a backlit silhouette that is shot against a window, a very high window, for instance, a very high lit window, sorry, that might actually reveal too much of the effect that your texture is implementing. And when that happens, it's very easy to create a derivation of your basic texture and reduce the unwanted effect to achieve a consistent look and feel without any undesired outcome. For instance, on this shot, if you feel that you're too strong, it's too strong in terms of loss of definition, then it's really easy to just derivate the look on that shot and reduce the intensity of the transformation. If you look at this close-up shot, we can see another use case of the Spatial Equalizer. We managed to retain the feeling of sharpness of the shot, but we can reduce the definition of the beard here that kind of gets in the way of the viewer looking at the eyes. And to do that, you're going to want to edit the threshold to make sure that the zone 1 really covers the beard as much as possible. And then you can reduce the gain of the zone 1. And that, if I go really all the way, you can see how it really reduces the definition of the beard. Of course, the streaming compression here doesn't help, so I'm amplifying the effect for you to really see it. And once we've done that, if you feel that the whole shot is a little bit less sharp than you want it to be, then you can add some gain to the zone 2 and find a balance between keeping the sharpness of the shot and reducing that extra definition that you don't really want to keep in the picture. If you feel very comfortable with the Spatial Equalizer and you need an advanced usage of the tool, if you want to customize it very, very, very finely, you have access to the blur parameters that are actually helping define the coverage of each frequency zone. So it's in the selection settings here in frequency. This is a very advanced set of settings. The default values that you can see here have been carefully chosen to get the most coherent, robust coverage of the image with the 6 zones. They should work well in the vast majority of cases. So I recommend you modify this only if you feel very at ease with the tool and you really understand the way it works. But we still thought it'd be interesting to let it accessible because you never know which use case you're going to encounter, and we think that customization is really key when doing look development. The same logic goes for the tone advanced settings. By default, we apply a tone curve to the gain of each zone. That's because we don't want to amplify or decrease the highlights or the saturation of the image when we're shaping the texture. So the gain works with a tone curve. And you have access here to the settings of this tone curve if you ever need to get off the beaten track. So feel free to experiment with that. And if you ever get lost in the complexity of the customization, you can just set back to the default values and you should be good. So that covers most of the use cases of the Spatial Equalizer. And as you can see, it can be a very powerful component of the texture of the image. And it's even more powerful, we found it anyway to be, when it's combined to the diffusion or to the halation module. Most of these tools work very well when they're combined with each other. So you should check out the next videos where we explain in depth how halation and diffusion work. Thanks for watching.